Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on episode 19 of season 4 of Haikyuu. And I really liked taking a break and focusing on Nekoma. One of the things I like about the mangaka Furudate that created this series is that he doesn't just focus solely on our protagonists. He kind of takes time to talk about the other teams, because a lot of sports genres, whether it's manga or anime or whether it's Western shows, they focus just on the sole team and everybody else is like an antagonist or an enemy. But the cool thing about Haikyuu is there's not really any enemies. I mean, there's antagonists, but they're not villains, you know? Every team has its own goals and its own trials and tribulations. And that's the cool thing about Haikyuu, is that Furudate lets us explore the motivations of the other characters that our protagonists interact with. And I really like that. So getting the Nekoma focus and getting their team dynamic kind of expanded upon was really cool, especially Fukunaga. I love that guy. He's great. But I'm going to be honest, I'm happy we're getting back to Inarizaki versus Karasuno, because the Mia twins, I love them. I love Iran. I'm so ready to get back into this game. So, as per usual, since copyright and all that fun stuff, the link to the reaction is going to be down below. After the reaction, I'm going to go and read the manga and then come back and we'll do a non-spoiler review and then a spoiler corner where we kind of discuss spoilers to the manga. So those of you that have read the manga or that want to be spoiled, you guys can stick around for that. But after that break, I am ready. We're in set 2 of this match during Nationals. It's episode 19. We still have 6 more episodes to go after this, so there's a lot of ground to cover. A lot of things could happen. But yeah, let's dive in, shall we? So we are going to start this episode here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so that was a good episode. It felt more like a lead in to the next episode to get us back on track with this match. I am glad that we've set back into a rhythm. When it started out the episode and it was 14-7, I was like, oh, we've got a big old gap. And I think it shows the growth of Karasuno, in that if this had been 2 seasons ago versus Alba Josai and we were this far behind, Kageyama would be freaking out, the whole team would be panicking, everybody would be like, we can't make it up, and they'd get reckless. But it shows how much growth our characters have had when at the start of this episode, they're 7 points behind, but they're not letting it phase them. Like Nishinoya is trying to get back in the game, he's trying to get his being able to receive Atsunomiya's serves, he's getting trying to perfect that. And I think Kageyama is probably the biggest point of this episode in showing just how much he's grown. Because if this had been that Alba Josai match 2 seasons ago, he'd be freaking out. We'd have to bring in Suga and he'd have to calm down. But here, no. He is, as Hinata calls him, calm Kageyama with a K. Like, he is in his zen. Like, he is in his moment. And he's so chill and okay with everything. And I love that growth for Kageyama, that he's in the zone. And I like that our announcers established that, yeah, this isn't just a battle between Karasuno and Inarizaki. It's a battle between our spikers. It's a battle between our setters, because Mia and Kageyama were both members of the all-youth training camp. So on down the line, they're going to hopefully, our Olympic guys are there watching. So, they want to both make a really good impression. So I like that we're establishing that dynamic between them. And yeah, the stress started mounting up against Inarizaki. I mean, the strategy for Karasuno to put all the pressure on Iran is really good, because Mia should not be your target, because he's great with serving and you can't really do anything about that except receive it when it comes in. But Iran in the moment, kind of targeting him like they did Ushijima, is a smart move. And it looked like it was working really good until I just realized that Kita, number 1, the captain, is subbing out for Iran. So ideally, that's a move by the team. If they're subbing Kita in, it's to let Iran rest, which kind of throws off the whole point of you guys aiming for him in the first place. But I don't know. I think it's interesting that I think this is the first match we've had where the captain of the squad has not been a starter member going on in the court. I think Kita's the first time we've seen the captain not start the game for a team, which is really interesting. So I'm really curious how that dynamic is going to change. But yeah, Kageyama channeling all the Oikawa in this episode, like that scrunchy face when he served, like the power behind it, the visualization, like he was just channeling Oikawa, which makes sense because regardless of how they both feel about each other, because clearly Oikawa does not like Kageyama, and Kageyama's not really crazy about Oikawa, but Kageyama is striving to beat Oikawa. And, if you can't beat him... But I think him imitating him and drawing inspiration from him is really cool. And it was very noticeable in this episode, the way the animation team did it and everything. Rintaro, showing that he is definitely not to be messed with as well. I love the idea of a blocker, like, putting his whole body into contorting and into doing the moves. Like, clearly Tsukishima's frustrated by it, and I like that Kuro makes the commentary like, oh, cool, that's what you do as a blocker. Interesting. It's just kind of this weird adaptation that he does as a blocker to kind of set himself apart. And I like these guys' little, like, scrunchy fox hands that he's, like, constantly ready to jump up and block. It's really cool. But, yeah, Inarizaki's still in the lead by, like, 10... and we're already almost to 20. I mean, I think they were at 19-9, and then I think Kageyama might have scored 2 more points, so maybe they're 19-11. So maybe they're only 7 or 8 down, which is still, when they're about to get in the 20 territory. And Suga, bless your heart, Suga, you tend to jinx things when you say things out loud. So Suga's like, we're gonna get back and win this thing in 2 sets. I'm like, are we? Because that's a long way down. And Inarizaki, even though they were starting to get pressure mounted on him and get flustered, I mean, they're the 2nd seed, so it's not like they're not going to go down without a fight, But we didn't get a lot of Hinata on the floor this episode. I think that's probably what was most noticeable for me, is that Hinata only came in that last half. It was mainly just setting up Nishinoya's personal growth that he's trying to do. And I like that Asahi makes the point that Nishinoya always encourages them, but they can't really, it's hard for them to encourage Nishinoya, because what do you say, And then they try to encourage him, he does the finger push-ups instead. So, interesting. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I'm really curious to see Kita come in as the captain. We're really down this set by like 7 or 8 points. So if we're going to make a turnaround, Karasuno needs to do that now. So next episode's called Leader. So I wonder, we've had episodes that were captain focused. I know in nearly every season we've had captain. I think season 3 might have been the only time we didn't have like a Daichi and Ushijima moment. Because Ushijima's kind of a weird captain. Ushijima is kind of like Bokudo. They're both really good players. So it makes sense that they're the captains of their team. But their team kind of carries them in some ways. Like Bokudo, it's emotionally, like their team is kind of like, yay, Bokudo, you did it. And keeping him from going into emo mode. And with Ushijima, the team didn't have to emotionally carry him, but Ushijima's not really what I would call a leader figure. Like Ushijima's like the opposite of Daichi. Like Ushijima would probably just be like, just keep practicing. Get better. I can't imagine him giving a big pep talk because Ushijima's so quiet. So they're kind of like, we didn't really have like a captain episode in season 3 because Ushijima just was like, I'm just a really good player and our team, we're kind of all just really good. But in every other season, we've had at least teams that have had captain moments. Like we had Terashima with Johinji. We've had obviously Oikawa and his team, Daichi and his team, and Kuro and his team. So you had these captain moments. So I'm curious, the next episode is called Leader, so I'm curious if we're going to have that captain on captain moment between Daichi and Kita to see if their styles are similar or different. I don't know. But anyway, I have a few spoilers to talk about, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I hope you all enjoyed the reaction. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you come back next week for episode 20 of Haikyuu. Stay safe, take care, and have a wonderful week. For the rest of you, we're going to talk a little bit about spoilers. Very much like the last 2 episodes, pretty much beat for beat in the manga. We did cover chapters 269, 270, 71, 72, and 73. So we got back to 5 chapters, which, to be fair, in the manga, these last 5 chapters, they're very much a transition. I feel like the manga is transitioning to bigger moments at this point in the game. Because we did go through nearly 5 chapters in this episode, which seems like a lot, similar to episode 15. But We did cover a lot of ground, but the manga really, I don't know. The manga at this point, it's not boring. Like, I liked this episode. I liked the character development with Kageyama because that's going to come into play later on. But I felt like I do remember. I think this is why I say I do remember. I think this is why I've forgotten this part of the match, because it's just getting to the end of the set. I feel like Furudate wanted to get to Kita and to introduce him, but there needed to be a setup. Like, how do we introduce Kita? Because Kita's a very interesting character because he's not your typical captain. So I feel like Furudate was like, okay, how do we introduce this character? There has to be a reason he comes on the court. I've kept him off. Now how do I get him on? And so this whole episode was to set up the idea of them putting pressure on Iran, putting pressure on him, kind of like what they did with Ushijima. It was able to give Kageyama that little moment of comparison to Oikawa, because later on, fingers crossed, anime, don't let me down. There's going to be a moment where we get to see that Oikawa has been watching this entire game on his little iPod, and he's been watching it this whole time on his phone. And just knowing that that Oikawa has been watching Kageyama serving and imitating him is like, oh, it's so meta. It translates to later on with Brazil and everything. It's just like his whole character. But knowing the fact that Oikawa has been watching this match and watching Kageyama serve and realize he's getting closer and closer to catching up with Oikawa, like, that's really good. And so I really liked that they focused on that this episode. Hinata was kind of off to the side this episode, although I do love seeing the quicks every time. But it was really setting up Nishinoya's battle for growth, Kageyama's growth as a character in general, and setting up the need to get Iran off the court so that we can bring in Kita. And I didn't even realize in the episode when I was reacting, I was like, oh, number 4. Well, who is number 4? Who is number 4? And then when I went and read the manga, I was like, oh, God, it's Iran. I was like, they took out Iran. So this episode ends right before chapter 273 ends. So just like last episode, it ends right almost to the end of a chapter. There was a couple little tiny things left out. One was this really cute interaction between Hinata where he was saying, oh, it's the ultimate server versus the ultimate libero. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. And it really is. It's Atsumu versus Nishinoya, which, funny that, or super server versus super libero. And then there's a little extra panel that I put here of as soon as Nishinoya does the finger push-ups, there's a little extra that Furudate draws where Kageyama's like, I want to try it, and Daichi's like, not now. It's so cute. But there really wasn't anything cut out of the chapter in terms of the manga. Everything was pretty much there. That one couple makes one little tiny appearance, but they don't say anything. It's mainly Daisho and Mika making commentary again. But everything is pretty much there. The only thing they leave out is they show the end of chapter 273, which I'm assuming is how they're going to lead off next episode, is Psycho's like, wait, they're taking out Iran? And then Coach Ukai is like, oh, they're letting him rest, which is what we didn't want to happen. And Kita comes on the court. And this page right here, that is the end of chapter 273, which is called Mood. Chapter 272 is the Ultimate Challengers. Chapter 273 called Mood, when Kita says, there's nothing to worry about. I don't know why you guys look scared. I'm just a stand-in. And it's like, for some reason, that page and Kita's expression at the end of that chapter gives me chills. I went back and looked at it like 3 times before posting it on here, and I'm like, because Kita's power isn't his ability as a player, it's his presence. And I love Kita's character. I'm starting to remember some things about his backstory that I'm like, oh yeah, like his whole like philosophy and his power as a player and what his team thinks. Like, his team reveres him. Like, his team loves Kita, and we get to see why next episode, because he's basically the mom. If Daichi is the dad of Karasuno, Kita is the mom of Inarizaki. Like, he is the sole guardian deity of Inarizaki and their foxes. And oh my god, I'm so excited. I know a lot of people really like Kita, and I really like Kita, and so that page and him just coming on the court, I'm like, oh. And I'm trying to remember, because like I said, this part of the match I tend to forget, I think because it's just moving along to get to that third set. And Furudate seems like he just wants to get Kita on the court to talk about him and get his backstory, and then us move into that final set, because the final set's when things get a little crazy. Yeah, like set 2 is like, ooh, that sucked, you guys. I think it ends up being like 25-13 Like they just, once Kita comes on the court, it's like the air gets rushed back in Inarizaki, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't have pressure anymore. Who needs pressure? We have Kita. And it's like, But I think episode 20 is going to lead into that. So yeah, if we're thinking about it, episode 20, Kita and Kita's backstory, and then that would lead us, and I'm assuming set 2 will probably end with episode 20, and so that leads 21, 22, and 23 possibly to finish out the match, and maybe end on 24 and have 24 and 25 to lead into Nekoma versus Karasuno. Oh no. That's what I'm thinking, so who knows, but I'm really excited to see Kita. I thought, honestly, I couldn't remember when he was going to come in, but as soon as we were getting towards the stress piling up on Iran, I'm like, oh, they're going to bring in Kita now, and then they did. So that makes me excited for next week, because I think every person that's read the manga and knows Kita's character, they're like, yes, I need to see Kita in action. So that'll be exciting. But in any case, that's pretty much it for spoilers this time around. I'm still looking forward to set 3, man. I'm starting to get, like, I think I forgot a lot about set 2 because it's just flowing so fast, but it's all starting to come together, what all I remember that hasn't happened yet. And I'm like, oh, they're saving that for set 3. All this stuff's going to happen in set 3. So I had a few people comment on Twitter right before I watched this episode. I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw a random post where somebody was like, even though part of it was farmed out, and I was like, stop reading. And then I went to go watch this. The animation, I didn't really notice it too much. If anything was different. I think that if we're complaining, because I have seen a lot of people complain about the animation, and obviously episode 15 is, bless its heart. I do think if you go back and look at Furudate's artwork in the manga, and I've noticed it reading the manga at this point, this match, Furudate is going through an evolution in their art style. Because if you've gone back and read the first couple chapters and the last chapter of the manga, holy cow, the difference. The difference is unreal in how much Furudate's art grew over those 8 years that they drew Haikyuu. But this match is kind of the point where I feel like the art style is evolving and changing, and Furudate's experimenting, because some of the expressions, when people are like, that looks weird in the anime, I'm like, it looks weird in the manga. Like, the anime and the expressions are pretty on point, actually, in this. So when people are like, oh, the animation sucks, I'm like, it kind of looks like the manga, though. like Furudate's changing their art style and evolving. And I think for the better in the long run, because when you get to the final chapters, oh my gosh, like the muscles, and it's like, I love you, Free, but I'm just saying, Atsumu's pro volleyball thighs, that's my thirsty thing of the day. I'm like, But I'm not complaining. So, yeah, but I think it's interesting that the anime is trying to follow Furudate's art style. It's just changing right now. And as the series goes on, his art style gets better and better. It's just going through this weird evolution right now as I go back and read the manga, which is interesting. So I'm curious to know if the anime will keep up with that, and what will happen for future seasons. But that was just a little tidbit there. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and the spoiler corner here. I hope you all enjoyed the episode. I think it's a transition episode. I feel like next episode when we get Kita, things are going to pick back up. The energy was fine this episode. I felt like it wasn't as hyped up as like Tanaka's episode or the episode with the Quick, 14 or 16, but it was still good. So I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful week. Stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week with more Haikyuu. Bye.